Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and when I woke up yesterday morning, I saw arguments all over the place surrounding a recent alpha playtest of Valve's upcoming game Deadlock and the journos over at The Verge. And it would seem that the journalists at The Verge are behaving in what can only be described as a rather puerile manner, and as a result, it would not be a big surprise to anyone if they end up seeing themselves blacklisted by Valve over their actions. Now, to bring everyone up to speed, as you may or may not be aware, Valve have been developing a new game dubbed Deadlock. By all appearances, Deadlock is a third-person hero shooter similar in style to Team Fortress 2 and Overwatch, but with very heavy MOBA elements. And this is not at all a new concept in genre fusions, but it looks fairly promising. Recently, or I should say currently, Valve has sent out offers for people to play an early development build of the game. As some of the people the offer was sent out to were journalists at The Verge. In particular would be our dramatis personae for this video, Sean Hollister and Tom Warren, both of whom are senior editors at The Verge. Now, the dust-up surrounding these two men is in regards to a recent article published by The Verge covering Deadlock, as well as a 24-minute-long YouTube video posted by Sean Hollister showcasing his first match against bots, which is on your screen now. The article is the first point of contention, so let's start there. After all, the beginning is always the best place to start. Now, this article, We Played Valve's Secret New Shooter Deadlock, was posted on August 12th by Sean Hollister, and right away we can see where things start to go wrong in terms of perception, where it states, "It's been nearly 5 years since Valve announced a truly new game, and counting. Valve has still not announced Deadlock, its new hero shooter that takes cues from Overwatch, Dota 2, Team Fortress 2, and more. But that hasn't stopped nearly 20,000 people from trying the game, including me. And I'm not under NDA. I have signed no contracts and made no verbal agreements. I haven't even clicked through a EULA." And right under that, it shows the message that greets all users who were invited to try the Deadlock build out, which reads, "Early Development Build. Deadlock is still in early development, with a lot of temporary art and experimental gameplay. Do not share anything about this game with anyone." And for the caption for that image, Sean Hollister states, "This message does pop up when I launch Deadlock, but I didn't click OK. Instead, I hit the escape key and watched it disappear." And along with jokes like this one from Tom Warren, The Verge editors have been catching some flack from people on social media, and this has sparked a bit of a debate online, with some people claiming The Verge staff were free to do as they pleased because they did not accept the informal non-disclosure agreement, while others are calling out the ethical implications of what The Verge have done here. But one thing I pointed out on Twitter is that not only are people arguing about the wrong thing, or at least only arguing a partial amount of the implications, the one thing they are arguing is also somewhat inaccurate, and I'll tell you what I mean. Because in addition to terms of use considerations and non-disclosure, there are also copyright implications to consider as well. But let's tackle the informal non-disclosure first. Now, for any form of contract, there is, of course, a requirement of acceptance by both parties in order for any contract to be valid. And many people are pointing out that because the staff over at The Verge hit escape and did not click OK on the pop-up, they did not accept, and therefore there is no enforceable contract, so they're free to do as they pleased. The thing is, though, that may not be factually true. In contract law, there is a term that many people may not be aware of. It's called implied acceptance. Now, Pat the Dog defines this as, "In contract law, acceptance is an essential element of a valid contract. Acceptance is the act of agreeing to the terms and conditions proposed by the other party. However, acceptance need not always be expressed explicitly. Sometimes acceptance can be implied based on the conduct of the parties involved." An implied acceptance is created when the parties do not explicitly agree to the terms of the contract, but instead engage in actions that demonstrate an intent to be bound by the terms. For example, if a supplier has been provided goods to a buyer for several months without any objections from either party, it can be implied that both parties have accepted the terms of the agreement. Now, Valve has this pop-up appear whenever the game is launched, unless you check the box and hit OK, meaning that it is heavily implied that acceptance of the terms stated are the intended requirement for trying out this build of Deadlock. And while through glitch or oversight a person could hit escape and not click OK, by continuing on to play the game, there is every possibility that, in terms of a court of law, continuing to play the game would constitute an implied acceptance. Meaning that while Sean and Tom continue to act like teenagers in regards to this situation, they're probably still bound to the requirement posted by Valve. Then there's also the copyright element to consider. Now, Deadlock is still an unpublished work. and that pop-up helps reinforce their right to first publication. Now, in terms of copyright and fair use can still be maintained even with an unpublished work. However, it is much more difficult to achieve under those circumstances. Additionally, the pop-up serves as blanket denial of any sort of implied license. This means that any content surrounding Deadlock would have to be fair use, and fair use is a much more strict determination for any unpublished work. And also, in terms of fair use, deliberately bypassing Valve's pop-up window and thereby refusing to accept the terms stated therein in order to adhere to a juvenile interpretation of the law so you can gleefully mock Valve while continuing to post a review of an alpha build of the game along with 24 minutes of uninterrupted gameplay with no commentary or critique would quite likely be counted as bad faith, which would be a severe detriment to any fair use consideration. In fact, after considering the 4 factors of fair use, there is no possible way I can see the 24 minutes of gameplay published to YouTube by Sean Hollister could possibly meet the threshold needed for fair use, and that's not even counting the fact that Deadlock is an unpublished work. There's no commentary, there's no critique, there's no analysis, there's nothing. It's just playing the game. The article itself? I would say that the article could rise to the level of fair use for an unpublished work had Sean Hollister and Tom Warren not engaged with the subject in bad faith by deliberately circumventing Valve's stated requirements and making jokes and jabs about them. And it would seem Valve didn't take kindly to their actions either, as the very same day the article was posted, it was updated to include the fact that, due to their actions, Valve has banned them from playing Deadlock. And there are some accounts claiming, without evidence, that The Verge and Tom Warren are now blacklisted by Valve, even though Sean Hollister was the one who wrote the article and posted the YouTube video. So I would advise everyone to treat anything like this with a grain of salt unless and until there is any sort of proof of anything at all to back up such a claim. But in my own opinion, if The Verge and its staff ended up on Valve's blacklist, or even blacklists of other companies by their actions here, I would definitely understand it. These are grown men behaving like children who are supposed to be journalists, professionals, and that includes maintaining ethical standards. But what about any of this is ethical journalism in any way? It's not. It's games media doing what it can for clicks and then behaving like infants in order to glom onto a little bit of rage baiting as icing on the cake. These days, games media continues to attempt to malign YouTubers for their lack of professionalism, and then we have supposed professionals behaving like this. It is, to my mind, disgraceful. And it is ironic that those YouTubers that are so denigrated for their alleged lack of professionalism are treating this situation far more professionally than the supposed professionals. But, you know, what do I know? I'm just a mook with a mic. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.